What's up guys, OutSystems here again with another video. This time let me show you my 10 tips regarding performance best practices with OutSystems platform. Just to make sure that we are aligned, these 10 tips from this public document. It is a kind of a tech note from OutSystems, so it's public, but my idea here is to expose or to explain this, combining the public document in this video way of sharing content with you and including some insights from my experience. So hope you enjoyed this video. We will explore the 10 performance best practices from this document. And before I move with the first topic, please make sure you visit outsystems.com and subscribe to my website. The idea here, I just launched this new project called OutSystems, and the idea here is to share with you great content and exclusive content, invite you for webinars and other ways of sharing content. So, and also to raffle some certifications for those that will subscribe to outsystems.com. So please subscribe, and I'll make sure that next months and next weeks I'll share a lot of great content with you. Let's talk about the first topic, which is database or table or entity indexes. This is something that happens all the time, because when you start a new application, just because you don't have any data there, or at least you have only a few records in most of the cases, when you start a new application, everything is very fast and very performant. But when the application starts to get more and more data, probably, or there is a chance at least, to start facing some issues regarding performance. There are a lot of causes or potential ways or to create performance issues, but one of them is related with lack of indexes on specific tables in OutSystems. So just to give you an example, if we have, as in a candidate database or applicant database, if we have a field like email, in this field we frequently perform queries over that to search the candidate by email. This is one of the fields that it is a great one to be indexed. Service Center, I'll talk a little bit more about Service Center on the next videos, but Service Center will probably provide you a glimpse on an idea on which queries are not performing that well, and then you can probably try to look specifically for those queries to fine-tune them. But sometimes you fine-tune your query and so on, and you still have performance issues. Maybe you should analyze from an index perspective and consider to create some indexes on your database fields. One important thing here, sometimes it's not that easy for you as a developer, as a pure or full stack developer, to identify which are the indexes that you are missing. So because of that, it is very important, if you have a DBA, a database administrator on your team, okay, to ask for the DBA to run some analysis scripts to better identify where potentially you could insert these indexes on your database, okay? Just to show you here on Service Studio how to create an index, okay? Just have to double click here on the entity and then navigate to the indexes tab somewhere here, include a new one, and publish your application. So once your application is published, the new index will be created. Of course, sometimes you can decrease the performance based on an index created with a wrong approach, but just showing to you how to create an index here on Service Studio. Number 2, maintenance plans or database maintenance plans. This one is very connected with infrastructure or DBAs and so on. So make sure you have maintenance plans in place with your DBA team, with your system administration team, I don't know. Make sure that you have maintenance plans to rebuild indexes, to rebuild statistics and so on, because these also affects your application, especially when you have a high volume of transactions and data on your application. So again, you should, a big friend, try to get more and more connected with your DBA team, because they will be the ones that will help you by creating the appropriate maintenance plans for your infrastructure. So DBAs. Number 3, service center reports or performance reports, okay? This is incredible. Now we are talking about almost 14 years with OutSystems. This one is incredible because a lot of companies, they don't know about service center, or they know that they have service center there installed, perfectly working, but they don't use service center performance reports to improve the experience, to improve their applications. Very often, when I'm working for a specific client, they don't know how to use service center, how to take advantage from service center reports to help them to identify performance issues. And it is amazing. You have a lot of things there. Let me show you here service center. So basically, service center without any effort from the developer, so you don't have to code anything, you don't have to do any extra code on your application. Service Center will always automatically monitor your application, capturing logs from errors, capturing logs from web screens, performance, web requests, integrations, and a lot of other types of monitoring regarding performance. Some scenarios here, one great scenario to explore here, it is, okay, I'm consuming an external or a third-party web service in system or my application is very slow, the users are complaining, and from my perspective, the problem is related with the third-party web services. And they say, as usual, okay, they say, no, this is not my problem, you have something on your side. This is the type of thing that you can see on Service Center, because Service Center is monitoring the time of each request that you are triggering to your third-party vendor or third-party service provider. And you can see logs, specific logs on Service Center saying how many seconds or milliseconds that specific web service call is taking to be executed, okay? On the opposite side, you have also the ability to identify if some service that you are exposing to someone else, to your clients, to some third-party integrator, I don't know, how these web services that you are exposing are performing. One thing that some companies, big factories, they have in place, it is a kind of factory manager role. You need a factory manager role to look for Service Center reports? No, you don't need that. Maybe just by having someone from your team to, I don't know, bi-weekly or monthly, look to Service Center, identify the most critical queries or areas that should be reviewed in terms of performance. And it's very easy to see that because you have a specific report that says this query, for instance, okay, this query that is taking 20 seconds, 30 seconds, is executed, I don't know, 20,000 times per month. So it's very easy to identify and to prioritize which are the problems that you will reach or that we will attack first. So you don't need a factory manager to do that, okay? With your development team, just put in place kind of a process inside your factory. Try to look at least once a month to your service center and to attack or to look for the performance problems that you are facing there and to create a plan to solve those problems. Number 4, avoid joins with using linked servers. Of course, and because OutSystems supports this type of integration or connection with external database via linked server, in some cases they will be necessary and so on, but you should consider some aspects or some variables here when you're deciding how and when you will link or you join, tables via linked servers. So one thing, if you are creating these joins with linked servers with small tables with small volume of records, probably you will not face performance issues and this will not be reflected on your end user experience. But when you are dealing with large volume databases with millions of records, probably the chances are, at least at some point, the performance issues will start and will affect your end user and your applications. So Choose wisely when you are creating these joins between tables via linked server, but sometimes one alternative it is to have a replica of the destination table on your side. Maybe this table is updated once a month. So there is no problem in most of the times to replicate this table on your side on a local OutSystems table, just to avoid the joins between your local OutSystems tables and linked servers. But of course, you have to evaluate based on your use case, based on your update or synchronize strategy, which will be the best strategy for you. But sometimes this synchronize or this replica table on your side, this is something that can be done very easily with the platform, and that will solve the problem. Number 5, front-end servers memory tuning. For this one, let me share with you 2 documents. The first one, it is the OutSystems installation checklist. You have a specific section talking about some memory configuration for your front-end server, and the other one is related with memory configurations related with application pool. These 2 things are strongly connected, but basically there are some configurations that you can do on your web servers that will help you to improve your applications regarding memory consumption, regarding memory tuning, and will benefit your application. And by benefiting your application, you benefit your end users, and you will increase adoption. Just for you to have an idea, it is possible on your front-end servers to create specific application pools for each group of your applications. I mean, you can create one application pool for your timers or your asynchronous processes. You can create another application pool for the front-end applications that are serving your end users, and another one for maybe services that you are exposing. And each application pool, on each application pool, you will be able to configure the memory usage and other resources from the server. And for each application pool, you will be able to set up different memory configurations and also different recycling strategies. This type of thing will help you with something like, if one specific application pool crashes, this will not, in most of the times, this will not affect the other one. So by isolating your applications in application pools, in different application pools with different configurations, you can distribute your resources, your server resources regarding memory, for instance, through these application pools. And by doing that, you can isolate problems, or you can avoid problems like, if I have anything on one application pool, if the application pool crashes, all the applications, everything will crash. So this is one thing that you can do that will help you with your applications, and that will avoid some issues. Number 6, isolate your binary data and your large text file data on different entities. Of course, when we talk about how to store files like a CV, like a resume, like a video, a picture, I don't know, any document that I want to store on my application. Of course, you can do it by integrating with Amazon S3 service or via file system, so write the file on the file system itself. There are a lot of pros and cons on different scenarios. There are this specific subject, I can make another video specific talking about this part here, but the fact is, yes, you can store files on your database safely with performance, but you have to make sure that you follow a few steps to do it, to avoid any issues in the future. What you should do here, it is basically, let me show you here on Service Studio, you should create different entity. The main thing here is that you should create a different table to store your binary data or large data or large text data. Okay, let me show you here on Service Studio. Here you can have, just to use it as an example, here we can have this document table that will store all my binary data on the application. And on the document table, let me add the name of the document, the document extension, the file size, and so on. And let me create, in here we will create a different table called, for instance, maybe document content, with only with the binary data field or attribute that will be responsible for storing your resume, your video, or your picture on the database. By doing that, you are avoiding to maybe when you are dragging a new aggregate to your preparation, by doing that, OutSystems will create only the aggregate that will be created by OutSystems will only query the main table without querying the other table here. And I'll make sure that I'll show you an example in the next videos on how this could impact on your application. But basically, this is the best practice to separate or to split these two areas. So by having your binary data on a extension table, extended table on your data model. Number 7, avoid long-running timers or batch jobs. If you're not familiar with timers, basically they are the processes or batches that will be responsible to run things in background. So I don't know, to send 2,000 emails 10 a.m. on Mondays and things like that. So timers are the ones that are responsible for these types of things. This specific topic, very often when some client asks me for a performance assessment and so on, this one happens a lot of times. And basically what happens is the developer, when start to develop with OutSystems, the developer neglects the fact that, okay, my application now, we don't have much data here, but few years from now the data volume will increase, and that timer that was running perfectly in the beginning of the project 2 years later now is having performance issues, and maybe sometimes it's aborting 100% of the processing before and running. And we have a lot of techniques here to implement regarding these timers or long-running timers issues, but this is the one that I try to follow on my projects, which is instead of performing, let me show you here on Service Studio, instead of performing a query here that could return, I don't know, 1 million records and process all the records and finish the processing here, instead of doing that, and because you have the risk here of maybe after 90% of the batch processing here, you have a timeout or a problem with some logic that will raise an exception. Everything that happened there will be aborted. So this is the main mistake that developers do here regarding timers. And my magic formula is very simple. Basically, instead of returning the full table here, let me return only maybe 50 records, specifying the top or max records on the aggregate. This configuration here, you maybe can use site properties to make it more flexible. So my idea here is just return 50 records, iterate over those 50 records, do what you need to do over those 50 records, then here commit, okay, just to make sure that those 50 records that were pending to be processed or to be processed, they will be committed on the database. Then here we can check if we have more records to be processed. Then by using a native action called wake timer, I can now trigger a wake timer that will start that process again. So by doing that, you will incrementally processing 50 records or 100 records or 500 records, I don't know. This is something that you can fine-tune on your production environment, and that's why it is a good idea to have this type of parameter on site properties. But basically retrieve a small number of records, process those records, commit, make sure you commit, and then check if you have more records to be processed and wake the timer again. This is very simple. There are other scenarios like, okay, let me specify the timeout, the maximum timeout from that specific timer, and once I start the timer, I check the start timestamp, and I'll be constantly here checking if I'm reaching that, I don't know, 30 minutes timeout timestamp, and I can, by doing that, I will be able to maybe commit the timer and wake it, commit the transaction and wake the timer again. So we have a lot of different variations here, but the one that I just explained to you, it is a very easy to implement and will solve, I think, maybe 80% of the use cases to avoid these issues with long running timers. Number 8, simplify your preparation actions or prep actions. Folks, this one, it is the funniest one, I think, because a lot of the times when we are auditing or when we are assessing some code from clients, I think the developers, they see the start end from the preparation and they think that they can do everything. They are very creative on what they do on the preparation. So this is another performance killer. It's very easy to see. It's very easy to identify when we are looking for service center reports. So avoid long preparations on your application. Review everything and try to avoid, and by only having on your preparation only the necessary logic that you have. Sometimes if you have something that it is heavy, or if you will not be able to control how much time that will take to be executed on your preparation, maybe would be a good idea to work with a lazy load strategy. And I believe there are some components on OutSystems to do that. So if you have, maybe you have one specific web service call that you need to make on that specific screen, and you are including that web service call on your preparation. Sometimes your user is being affected by that web service call, and one thing that you could do is maybe to keep your preparation simple and make that web service call with using a lazy load approach. Lazy load approach, I mean your web screen will be rendered with the information that you have on preparation, and then that specific call could be made 2 seconds after your web screen being completely rendered. So this is only one example. Another performance killer that is very common on preparation, it is to maybe retrieve a query from your database or aggregate from a database with, I don't know, 5,000 records, and you do some iteration on calculation on your preparation instead of doing in a different moment or maybe in a screen action. This is another performance killer because that time that will be necessary to run that logic, to iterate over those 5,000 records, maybe your end user will be affected by that processing on your preparation. And if you understand your preparation life cycle, the web page will only be displayed to your end user when the preparation finishes. So avoid unnecessary logic on your preparation. Number 9, avoid using data from your preparation on your screen actions. This will be a funny one to explain to you, because by using Google Chrome developer tools, we'll be able to see the difference in terms of traffic between web server and your browser just by simply tweaking your application to avoid that. Let me open also the Google Chrome console here. Here we have a web page to retrieve a candidate profile, okay? And I have here a button to download the candidate resume from my application. So we can see here on Google Chrome that this page, it is taking some time to be fully rendered, and also aspect that we can see here is the size of the request. And what is happening here? Let me jump now to Service Studio. What we are doing here in Service Studio, and this is the wrong way of doing it. On preparation, I have an aggregate that it is retrieving the data from my candidate table or my candidate entity with join to the table that stores the candidate resume. So we have an aggregate with a join with candidate basic data and candidate resume file. So now let me jump to the screen action that is responsible to download the candidate CV. Inside the screen action, I'm using the binary data field from preparation to download the candidate CV to the end users. So what is happening here? Basically, OutSystems behind the scenes, they have kind of a code optimizer, and this is another topic that we can make another video just talking about the optimizations that OutSystems does behind the scenes in the developer without any effort from the developer side. But here what is happening is OutSystems assumes that when you finish the preparation, you will need that binary file immediately. And by doing that, the request will also transport that binary data with your web request, causing the slow web screen and or resulting in a large request with a large view stage. Now let me tweak the application to show you how can we do without having that side effect. Basically, what we have to do here is we will not join the binary data file on the preparation. Let me remove that from the aggregate. Then let me now jump to the screen action, and on the screen action only when the screen action is executed, let me only here do the query to retrieve that binary data and to download the binary data to the end user. By doing that, the platform only will run that code to retrieve the binary data when the user hits the download CV or download resume button here. Now let me jump to the Google Chrome. Let me clear here the logs and so on and show you the difference in terms of view state and time load from your page. And you can see a huge difference here in terms of performance. So now we have a totally different time in terms of page load here, and you don't have that huge request being executed here or being impacting on your view state. And only when I hit download, then the platform only here will retrieve the binary data from database. This is the type of thing that could crash your web page or could slow your web page dramatically. So slowing your web page dramatically, you are decreasing adoption. This is a tricky one because sometimes the developer assumes OutSystems is compiling my application and so on, so I don't understand here what is happening and why this page is taking too long to be executed. And here I just explained to you how can you deal with that. Hope you enjoy. Number 10, use the advanced query or the SQL widget to retrieve data wisely. When we are using the aggregate from the platform, and the idea of the aggregate, it is to help non-proficient developers to create database queries very fast and very easy and very optimized queries, because this is something that we can make another video talking about the OutSystems optimizer that runs behind the scenes. But basically, if you have one aggregate querying a table with 100 fields, maybe OutSystems can detect that aggregate, although that aggregate is querying a table with, I don't know, 100 fields, if you are only using 5 fields from those 100, OutSystems in compilation time will replace that select all from table A to something like select column A, B, C, D, E. So this is something that the platform is creating and it is optimizing behind the scenes and you don't even notice. But when we are using an advanced query or a SQL, now they call it a SQL, okay? When you are using a SQL or advanced query, you are the one in control of your query. This is good, but this can be bad because here you will be the one in charge of saying to OutSystems which columns that you want to use, that you want to retrieve from your database. So the common mistake that we have here, it is that developers, maybe they create the advanced query because they don't want to use the aggregate and they simply drag as output structure to Service Studio the entire table structure or entity structure, and they perform a kind of select all from my table and they include their conditions and where clauses and joins and so on. So by doing that, you are explicitly saying to OutSystems, please retrieve your 100 fields from the database. This is one important thing. If you need SQL or advanced query on your logic, make sure you only return the extremely necessary database fields from your application. And here, the other thing that I want to share with you, it is the aggregates, they have the optimizer, the platform optimizer working for them. Yes, perfect. What I mean by they are not bulletproof. If you encapsulate your aggregate inside an action for some reason, I don't know, you decided that you want to encapsulate that aggregate inside one action and one logic action from OutSystems. And if you create output parameter that returns the full structure from that aggregate to your logic, to outside that return the full structure from that aggregate on that clean action, and that will return the full structure from that aggregate as output parameter of your action, OutSystems will not be able to optimize that aggregate. Why? Because if you are encapsulating your aggregate inside one specific action and this aggregate result is being returned as output parameter of that action, OutSystems assumes that you will use that action in a lot of places of your application, and OutSystems will not be able to create specific branches behind the scenes for every action just to select, okay, in this execution, the logic is consuming only column A and B, and this one C and D, and this one A and D, and so on. So avoid this type of thing, because even using an aggregate, if you are returning the full structure as output parameter, the platform will perform a select all from your entity. This is another thing, another trick from Optimizer, OutSystems, from the platform optimizer that runs behind the scenes. And this is a tricky one that sometimes affects your applications too. 10 performance best practices that I just shared with you. So hope you enjoyed. We have a lot of other things to do. Again, this is based on a public document from OutSystems, but I just tried here to bring to you this is in a different format with some insights and some live examples to help you with that. Big thank you for your time, for your attention. And if you want to help me, if you want to support this initiative, go to outsystems.com, subscribe there. I don't know in which platform you are now watching this video, so subscribe here on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I don't know which social platform you are using, but please help me. If you want to support this initiative, outsystems.com, subscribe, and I'll make sure that a lot of great content will be shared. I'll invite you for exclusive webinars and for raffles, for swags, OutSystems swags, and also for OutSystems certifications. So please subscribe. Big thank you for your attention, and see you in the next video.